Swan Prep is another pre-Pilates mat exercise that can be very helpful to help people find thoracic extension, start to bring some awareness into the upper back without moving into the larger range of motion that is included in the Swan exercise. So this can also be really helpful when you're on the reformer. There are ways to do the Swan Prep that we'll go over later to lead into reformer Swan as well. For Swan Prep, we'll start on our stomachs in a prone position. Body is nice and long. Arms start down by the armpits on the mat. Palms flat, fingertips spread wide. And ideally, we want to start with the forehead down on the mat. From here, already making sure that we're set up in a nice prone position, so gently tucking the pubic bone down into the mat, lengthening out through the legs and pointing the toes. From there, with an inhale, you're going to gently press down through the arms and start to lift the chest just barely up off the mat. So I'm really trying to lift from the bra line area up versus from the lower back. And we're only lifting as high as we can still have the elbows bent. From there, you gently lower back down. So that inhale gives us the lengthening through the spine that we need to lift up through that extension, and then gently lower back down all the way. There's a lot of variations that we can still kind of consider as Swan Prep. So for one, we could come up into that little baby lift, and then you can have them practice hovering the hands. So they've got to find a little bit more support for the upper middle back. Lower the hands down and lower all the way. We could also eventually have the arms by the sides or at the forehead where they're having to lift into that baby swan without the help of the arms. So this would be a way that we could kind of start to progress that movement to get a little bit closer to the regular swan exercise, but still be in a smaller range of motion than full swan. A few of the common problems that we often see with the Swan Prep, or really any swan exercise, first and foremost is that people will try to just extend through their head and neck. So you'll see them kick their head all the way up and look straight forward. You can see we're getting a lot of extension in the cervical spine here, which is not great. And this just is not super functional. So we want to cue lengthening out through the crown of the head, hugging the throat up into the back of the neck or tucking the chin slightly so that we're keeping that length in the back of the neck. The head and neck are really just along for the ride with the rest of the spine here. Secondly, we want to make sure that people are staying up in the thoracic spine for this motion. So making sure that they're not just immediately kind of curling into the lower back, where often you'll see the feet float up off the floor. So making sure to cue bra line up is where we're lifting from. We're keeping those lower ribs down on the mat as well. As for modifications, this is already a preparation exercise, so there's not much we can do to back this down another step. However, you can work in a smaller range of motion, so maybe people are only lifting to here and not all the way up. And then secondly, if people just are really finding this in their lower back, you can always try adjusting the leg position. So sometimes people being in more of an externally rotated position in a prone, it actually kind of force closes the sacrum and can give that a little bit more support if they've got any SI instability, or vice versa. If you find that they're laying with their legs externally rotated, sometimes coming into parallel can be helpful. For some people, bending the knees is helpful, although for most, I think this puts more strain on the lower back. But playing with the leg position is an excellent option, as well as always cueing that pubic bone tuck into the mat, hip bones press down so that we're getting that length in the lower back as we lift up through the chest instead of shortening the lower back to lift the chest.